Welcome to The Circle. This is Ruptures and Roots, and I'm your fellow traveler, Joshua Swenson. This is a space for deep listening and the sharing of stories of rupture and transformation in unprecedented times, and a life that roots into the cracks. In Old Irish, there is a word, anamcara. It refers to a person who serves as a spiritual confidant and guide, with whom you share your deepest thoughts and feelings. Sitting in the circle with me today is an anamcara of mine, Josh Harper. Together, Josh and I have walked a path of deepening into brotherhood through our men's group, which has been going on for about 3 years now. We have held space for each other in sacred medicine circles and guide support groups. He is a gifted healer, somatic and sensory guide, dedicated partner, and a gentle father of 2 teenage girls. One of my favorite ways of witnessing Josh's gifts is by communing with darkness and place in the intentional night hikes he facilitates in the hills of Oakland. Welcome to the circle, Josh. I'm honored to be holding space for your story today. Is there anything more you'd like to share by way of introduction?
Thanks, Joshua. It's really good to be here, and I'm excited for this endeavor and this conversation. There's nothing else I might add. I've lived here in Oakland for 22 years now, and really call this place home, and have come to love this community. I'm also a husband to my wife, Margie, and
Before we open the space for your story, I'd like to invite us both to begin with a brief check-in. How are you arriving today? In a few words, how are you feeling in mind, body, and spirit?
I'm feeling nourished, connected to my family, connected to you as we were prepping this call, and really open-hearted to have a good and deep conversation today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling also very connected, and anytime we get some one-on-one, it's really special, and feel a lot of resonance and how our paths parallel and intersect and supporting each other in our journeys. It's, anamkara. It feels really the right word.
Yep.
And I'm a little tired. I didn't sleep so well last night and had a quite disturbing and potent dream, which maybe we'll process on our dream thread on our men's group. And just excited about this conversation. It's the second one I'm facilitating, and the parts of this platform, this offering, the foundation of this offering, the essays I start writing, and the conversations I'm recording, it's all coming together. So I'm excited to see this vision being brought forth. Yeah, we'll check there. So thank you, and I appreciate your presence here today. I'd like to invite us both to ground and share a breath. And whenever you're ready, you're welcome to step into your story. What was life like before the rupture, or wherever feels right to begin?
Yeah. I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in a small rural town in Northern California, nestled at the base of the Trinity Alps, in a beautiful forest. I grew up feeling very connected to nature. I grew up in a solid family, and part of a Christian church that is would find itself in the charismatic or Pentecostal stream of Christianity, which is very open to spirit and pretty open to mystical things happening in our meetings. So I'm really grateful for that foundation in my life. I felt like I had this built-in category for there's something bigger than me, and something out there in the world that's bigger. And even though my current journey has shifted a little bit away from that ideology, I'm really grateful for that. So I grew up in a church, and going to college, there was this period of individuation where I felt like, okay, this religion was really handed to me. It was the air I breathed as I was growing up, and I almost didn't have a choice. And so I intentionally went into college thinking, I'm going to hold that loosely and be open to whatever I encounter, other ideas, other ways of being, and was met with this really beautiful community still under the Christian umbrella. And through a lot of synchronous events, found myself connected to this great beloved community. And it was a place of nurturing my spirituality, of really encouraging me to think critically about my faith. But what I appreciated most about it was the community and the connectedness, the depth of relationships that I found there. And I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to keep being a part of it when I graduated. So I found a job, or continued a job, as a waiter to kind of pay the bills, and volunteered with this organization that I was a part of, this community, and really loved it, really enjoyed it. It continued to shape and form me. And it was in those early years of working with this organization that there was a very racist comic written in our school newspaper. And there was some stuff going on politically about immigration, and our community was somewhat diverse. And so some of the students of color came to the leadership and said, hey, this happened. How are we going to respond to this? And I didn't have a very good answer to that. Our leadership team didn't have a very good answer. And we're like, well, that's just a student event, and that doesn't have anything to do with our community. And these students said, well, it really hurt us. And when one part of the body is hurting, the whole body hurts. So we need to respond to it. And it really kicked off this question, this quest of, and a realization that my religious experience and my theology could not hold an adequate response to this experience of racism that happened publicly in our campus. And I felt like, oh, there's a problem there. And as a leadership team, we brought in support to help us. Other older, wiser staff from the region would come in and guide us and teach us. And it was very eye-opening. It was this realization that everything I had been a part of, that I felt was like the whole truth, was missing something. And it was missing something because of systemic injustices in our world, and being a part of the dominant religion in a country. There's certain aspects of how that's shaped and formed that that don't challenge the status quo and don't challenge power structures that exist in our country. And so I was, it was sobering to really lose faith in the institution a little bit, and I think in a really helpful way. I had a healthy critique of like, oh, these church and even the organization I was in maybe claimed to have everything right and claimed a certainty about the right way to understand theology, and I saw flat sides, and I saw some problems in that, and I sought to learn. And part of that was going to places where there was injustice and where people were on the margins, and learning from them, learning from other Christians who are engaged in justice work. And that's ultimately what brought me to Oakland. I began bringing students on experiential learning programming, and I loved that. I was just a half step in front of them on these learning in the learning and development and the formation. But we would go and sit at the feet of leaders doing really wonderful work here in the city, and that radically shaped and changed my life. But it gave me this healthy critique that, okay, even though this that there's flat sides to this religious system that I'm a part of, and especially when that religious system is embedded into power structures in a country or in a society, that's when it's helpful and healthy to have a critique. And that kind of stayed with me. And I was in this evangelical organization, but in a certain pocket of it that was a little more radical, a little more progressive. And our job within that was to bring students into these experiences that really disrupted their worldview. It brought in this ontological shock of, oh, everything I thought I knew was upended. And then through reading the Bible, and there's so much in Scripture about God being on the side of the poor and the oppressed and the people on the margins. But growing up, I had almost never heard of that part of it, but it's all there. It's hiding in plain sight. And so to help students, to walk them into an experience of disorientation, and then helping them reorient to a deeper truth in the sacred text of the religion was really powerful. And I did that for 25 years. And that openness to question what I've always been told and to seek it myself through experience has led me to this place of still being a part of a church. I still preach at that church a couple times a year. I lead the children's sermons once a month, and yet I've also have this openness to understanding and exploring my relationship with the divine in a way that feels different than it did 20, 25 years ago. Yeah, thankfully, I feel like my community can hold that and can hold a variety of people in a variety of places with a wide range of beliefs about the doctrine of our faith, and yet we still belong and we can still be in community together.
You mentioned ontological shock, which is I've heard that phrase used with regard to like UFOs and non-human intelligence and people's encounters with things that just don't conform to the worldview that they hold, and that you were drawn to, and I suppose also like psychedelic experiences, that you were drawn to creating these conditions for people to experience that by bringing them outside their comfort zone into impoverished areas or like, yeah, that's just really beautiful to witness and seeing that thread, and yet the image I had,
Mm-hmm.
in the context of this podcast and the narratives that I'm drawn to is just like these little fractures forming.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm curious if you felt that there was a moment when you felt the ground of your life begin to shift, to doing the work that you were doing and the relationships that you had, the community, the church community that you were a part of. When did you start to feel that change?
Yeah. I mean, that initial experience with those students coming to us in their pain was one of those. Another was dealing with my own um, personal growth, my own realization that in understanding the family systems and even the religious systems that I grew up in did not give me a lot of space to feel my feelings, to validate those feelings. I never talked to my parents about that, and I've been reflecting a lot on my childhood, and I feel like I was pretty sensitive as a kid, and being a male-bodied person socialized in this patriarchal society, the explicit and implicit messages are that you don't do that. You don't show that kind of vulnerability. So I just learned to stuff those, and that was that was always an issue in my marriage. My wife was just wanting more from me. She wanted more of, wanted to know more of all of me. And I really struggled to access and connect to my heart, to my emotions. And part of that experience, I tried talk therapy, and that wasn't all that effective. Living here in Oakland, I had encountered some trauma of being assaulted and things like that. And the way that I found healing was in this somatic experience of, it's called Watsu. It's a water shiatsu up at a hot springs in Northern California. And it's just a practitioner's floating you around in this like 98-degree body temperature water, and had a profound, and now that I have experience with psychedelics, this was before I'd ever tried that. It was a psychedelic experience. I dropped into this trance, really found healing. And then it was you actually that told me about the Good Grief Network. And it's the Good Grief Network is a 10-step program to talk about and to heal, and to not heal, but to be with our grief around environmental issues. Normally there's a cost to that, and I was too cheap to pay that. But this one particular opportunity, it was free because they were filming a documentary about it. And that was life-changing, to be in a circle of people where there was sacred space and ritual to name and share what we were feeling about the existential crisis of eco collapse and climate change, and all sorts of things related to that. And I learned to untap and uncork my grief and to let it flow, and the value of being with those challenging feelings, which again, my family and religious systems did not give me that space. And that was tremendously healing. And then psychedelics were another place where I began to tap into that. So I guess your question was, where was the rupture? And I think it was feeling like there was something more, that I couldn't quite get over this hurdle. I couldn't quite access a deeper part of who I am, and my heart and my emotions, and just following my inner healing guide into like how do I get there. And it was in this more somatic, mystical kind of ways that employing lots of different modalities, but that was where I was really finding it. Being in our men's group, we've joked about our men's group tagline being like men helping men feel their feelings. And that's exactly, that's been so helpful.
And we've all shifted and evolved so much through that process. Like,
much.
I forgot about that. You, the Good Grief Network, and that you had done that. And, for me also, that was like, I remember like feeling like I needed to learn to grieve and be supported in this, but I didn't know how to do it or where to start. And I heard about that program somehow.
Yeah.
And I hesitated so much to take the plunge. And finally, when I did, I was just like, wow, I've been needing this for so long, and I learned how to hold this kind of like counsel space, which, this podcast, this space is an outgrowth of that. I first learned about counsel in that community, which is modeled after the AA's 10-step program or 12-step. Just like this space where you can speak from your heart. And then when other people are speaking, there's no crosstalk. You're just actively listening and trying to listen from the heart. And it was this long process. I think I went through 4 or 5 rounds of the Good Grief Network. And then, and then implementing that in our men's group, the council that we hold as we do our book club and everything. Gradually learning how to communicate like that and to show up in that way in relationship. And then that for me taught me so much about just how to be in relationship with my emotions, Yeah.
Yeah. They're not something to run away from or to hide. That there's signals in our body that we can pay attention to and learn from. This conversation's likely to head here anyway, but I'll mention too that this practice of walking up in the Oakland Hills at night without artificial light is like therapy for me. There's a series of little rituals that help us drop into our body and really open up to the spirit of the place. And then at the heart of this night walk is a solo walk through a really shaded, dark part of the forest that on one particular loop is about 2/3 of a mile and takes 20, 25 minutes. And it's in that container where all of my emotions come up, and sometimes I'm feeling fear because I'm walking through the forest at night, and then I'll just be with it and I'll sit, allow it to move in me. And then I'll identify what are other areas in my life where I'm feeling fear. And I feel fear for the future of this world and this planet and my daughters who are growing up and into it. And I'll feel grief for the pain and suffering in the world that's always there, but the space is giving it space to move and for me to be with it and for those emotions to move and flow. And then I'll shift into love and gratitude. And sometimes I'll hold and express my anger. And it's this really rich experience that feels to me like church. It's very spiritual. It's more spiritually nourishing, I think, sometimes than actual church. But, and it also feels like therapy. And a big part of that is finding the right container to let these emotions kind of flow and move through me. And that's had that's spilled over into other parts of my life in really profound ways.
I just really appreciate how you're naming how these emotions flow and how you're able to be so present with them. And it's like, often, difficult emotion. I don't even like the word difficult because that puts a valence on it, like a challenging emotion to hold, maybe. Fear, grief, these are big ones. Rage, we want to like push them away or like run away from them or deny them in some way. But this practice that you're naming, which is an outgrowth of everything you're doing, the psychedelics, the Watsu, the night hikes, presence with your family and in our groups, you're finding your way to, just be with them and be with the flow and witness that, like, it might start with fear, but it shifts into grief. And as I stay with the grief, it shifts into love. And then something else might emerge from the love.
Yeah. And it might cycle back through all of them again. And it's just
right.
really potent.
And I think you're speaking also into this, like, the transformational aspect of the cycle in ruptures and rooting, like the kind of breaking from the old path and the old relationships. And even in the rupture, there's like roots begin to form, like the transformation is already, happening. I'm wondering if you want like to like speak more to that as well. You're naming this particular practice of the night hikes. Were there other realizations or turning points or guides along the way that have allowed you to deepen into this process of transformation?
It's such a constellation of different influences. I've touched on many of them. Our men's group, Good Grief Network. I shifted away from at the end of my 25-year career of working with this particular Christian organization. I am working now as a coach and a guide, guiding people through their own transformations and working with groups and individuals. And I learned a practice called forest ecotherapy because part of my work with this Christian organization was doing experiential learning around environmental issues and environmental justice. And I've been able to weave that into my practice of guiding and coaching people. It was definitely a big part of how the night walks have developed. I'm learning another practice called a therapeutic modality called relational somatic healing. And that's been really important for me in my learning and development. And what I'm finding is, my whole career has been based on experience and experiential learning. And the classes and the workshops are one thing, but it's these practice groups. It's our men's group that meets weekly, and we discuss a book, but it's more than a book club. It's how we interact and relate to one another. And as I'm practicing relational somatic healing with a little community of other practitioners, it's practice and it's real therapy that's happening. It's real healing, and there's beautiful. What I'm finding is there's little pockets of community and healing community that I think is the most fundamental part to this. That is, whether it is my church or our men's group or these different places where I'm connected, our healers collective that we're both a part of. It's finding a community that really is focused on healing and growing and connecting. I think that's been pretty foundational for this. And somehow I find myself in this work and in this life that has all these things woven together in a really beautiful way. I want to add too that this work has completely changed how I show up with my kids. And I've got 2 teenage daughters, a senior in high school and a freshman. And um, they are some of my biggest teachers. They don't hold back, and I'm not shying away from any kind of conflict with them, or if I hurt their feelings, or they're able to say it and speak it, and I can own it without being defensive, and we can work it out. And so these little ruptures in a family dynamic that get repaired and get just lead to deeper connection. And I'm so grateful for the relationship I have with my kids. It's really, that's another big part of this this life that I'm living.
I want to read your parenting advice book at some point when it's written, because I always love hearing you talk about your teenage daughters, and I have a 6-year-old daughter who is full of energy and so amazing, and similarly has taught me so much. And a phrase that I landed on to sort of like help me orient toward her was that I was apprenticing myself to her ways of wildness and wonder. And when she was really young,
that's beautiful.
There were all these walls up. It was, I was beginning this work, beginning to explore psychedelics, but there was still all these walls up. And, I was just like, I had somehow wandered into being a very serious adult, and then to have this just like ball of energy and vitality, it was just such a, it was so healing, and, I just, I would sit on the edge of the creek, and she'd like want to kick off her shoes and splash and get wet. And I was just like, but then, I started kicking my shoes off and going in the creek with her. And, she wants to like explore off the path. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And, little by little, I've, through that relationship, rediscovered these, the wonder of life that children have, And for you, I imagine that's shifted now with your teenage daughters. And so I'm appreciative of you naming that. And I'm wondering, like, what else do you feel emerging for you as you relate with them?
Yeah. I mean, and just to name, like, you are so well on your way of writing your own parenting book, of just being able to show up in your kids' ways like that, and let them teach you and lead you to be authentic with them. I mean, that's so important. And in a culture of patriarchy, and that's just led to a really anemic masculinity that and underdeveloped and immature masculinity that we see unfolding in our world right now. I think it's so refreshing to see fathers be real and authentic. I don't know. I don't know this for certain, but I feel like an antidote to that is men who are allowing and getting in touch with their the deeper feminine energy that's within them, and living this integrated masculine and feminine. And to be fathers of daughters, what a beautiful opportunity to allow our daughters to teach us and to guide us and lead us.
Yeah. I'm reminded of another book that we read in our men's group called The Flower Wand.
I was just thinking of that myself.
And the archetype of Dionysus, as opposed to the Greek gods who, like Zeus and Ares and, Hercules, who like are strong and go around plundering and raping and pillaging. Dionysus, in the older myths, as portrayed in this book, was a champion of women and later got portrayed as like a drunkard partier, but that drink in earlier times was more associated perhaps with psychedelics and revelry and maybe deep communion, the natural world. So and in this book, The Flowering Wand, it was making a similar kind of positing a similar kind of thing as you just named. Yeah.
And I think that even the title of that book, it's this alternate archetype for masculinity, whereas often she talks about in myth that the sword is a symbol for masculinity that's piercing, that's cutting, and the flowering wand is an alternate one that we can look at. It's a staff or a stick that is regenerative and growing, and she's naming this different way of understanding masculinity that I think is very integrative of integrating the feminine in our lives, and the fruit of that is regeneration. It's growth. It's not divisive. It's empowering.
What do you see taking root in you now?
I really feel a deep calling to helping other people on this healing journey, whatever that means for them, whatever that the course of that is, and just to accompany people on it. And I'm particularly drawn to folks with religious trauma. I'm drawn to working with men who are trying to find that deeper connection to their hearts, to their emotions, to their bodies, to walking into this integration of the feminine. And I am drawn to help people reconnect to the natural world. And so all of those things are ways I am trying to show up in the world and to offer to people a path towards healing in those different ways. Really finding, and a thread through all of that is finding an allyship in the natural world that as we understand and find ourselves as part of this interdependent, interconnected, larger web of life. That's a term Joanna Macy learns, that there is that's healing. That's it's been a huge part of my own healing, and it's a big part of the work that I do. Really wanting to find deep, authentic connection wherever I go. That's whether it's the woman at the post office or the clerk who's checking me out at the grocery store. Just even if it's a moment of brief presence, of just trying to be present to that, to really witness people, see people in both short encounters and more spacious ones.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me think of a practice that I've been doing and noticing this tendency of mine to sort of like carry this lens of judgment as I walk around the world, to be constantly bringing that back into awareness. And I've actually been listening to this funky music called Improvisations on Ram Dass. And there's these couple tracks that it's just like experimental jazz with like Ram Dass's like lectures interspersed through them. And really helpful teaching for me has been seeing people as trees. So, he says, when you walk in a forest, you might see like a a big tree or a short tree or a fat tree, one that's curled in an odd way or something like that, or doesn't have many leaves, but you don't think like, oh, that tree is bad or that tree is good. You just kind of appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
we're walking around and we're constantly seeing all different kinds of people, but we jump into this judging mode. So I've been trying to bring myself back to that, seeing people as trees and complementing that with this mantra. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. Like just repeating this as I'm walking around while complementing these two together I've been beginning to glimpse how these little moments of connection, in like, oh, there's a really interesting looking person. Oh, wow, look at this interesting looking person. Like it's more like appreciation coming through instead of judgment and fear. And then the judgment is rooted in my fear,
Yeah. And curiosity.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're bringing curiosity into that. Like, what is their story?
Yeah.
What has shaped them to be who they are today?
Yeah. I like thinking about how a tree, like maybe it didn't receive sunlight here, or maybe it didn't receive water here. And so that's why it grew this way. And in a similar way, like, humans, as we're coming of age in this machine of a civilization, which is brutal in so many different ways. I think we really so quickly lose touch with like that primordial vibrancy of being a child, and it's like so quickly like conditioned out of us. So, it's like we weren't watered properly, but imagine if we had been, but then it's just like, oh yeah, there's this like honoring of that and appreciation of that and then that's like turned back on myself too.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that about the finding connection and witnessing connection emerging in different spaces. And one thing that also sparked for me as you were speaking there was what we were talking about right before the call of, this kind of like the way that nature has been mirroring your experience the more you've been doing this night hike practice. I'm wondering if you'd like to share about that, because I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah. This is like a very live and current realization about the practice. Our other fellow men's group friend, Andrew, and I have been doing this for a little over a year and a half. And we started out during the full moon when there was more light. And then we thought, I like this a lot. I want to do it. I want to do it more often. And we did it in the waning moon when there wasn't as much light. And we're close enough to the city, even though we can't see lights, the ambient light spills over the ridge. And we started doing it weekly and sometimes multiple times a week. And so this practice has just grown and developed. And it's even different for both Andrew and I. And it's, there's all sorts of mysterious stuff that happens. And what's feeling like, we've probably done it 70 or 80 times by now. I'm not keeping track, but there is this feeling of a connection and of a familiarity. And I'm noticing the forest showing up in really interesting ways through animal encounters, and some of them we see and know what they are. Others remain mysterious. There's this one particular noise we hear quite often that we have no idea what it is, but it comes to us. One of our fellow walkers was like, it feels like it knows you. And we thought, oh, that's a really interesting take on this. And we approach it with a deep reverence. We have an invocation at the beginning of the walk, speaking to the spirit of the land and what we're encountering. and inviting it to be with us and asking permission. And it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's really an important part of what we do, and it sets us in a posture of openness, uh, of open to the experience of deeper connection. Um, a lot of what we do is rooted in animism, and one of my teachers talked about that. He's an anthropologist. His name's Eduardo Luna, and he says that animism is not really a belief. It's not like I believe there's life and an animating life force in this stuff. He said it's something that's experienced, and that really was helpful for me. It's not like I have to wrap my brain around what exactly is happening, but I just have to be open to it, to experience this living web of life. And there's a practice and a ritual of just opening up to that and allowing it to interact with us, and it does. And things show up in really synchronous and mysterious ways. And it's just curious to walk into that and to deepen the relationship that we have to the land. It's fascinating. And one final thought about the night walks is that over the past year and a half that we've been doing this, we've had many, many people join us, and the practice has evolved and grown. And I think it's important to name that as Andrew and I have been working on this, it has been a container and a vehicle for us to come into our own bodies. It's an embodiment practice. It's a place where we can get in touch with our hearts and our emotions. And the women that have come and walked with us have been really influential in helping us do that. And I remember trying to lead it and guide it. And I felt like, who am I to mansplain to these women how to be more in their bodies? They should be guiding me into that. And so I wanted to name it's something that we are passionate about, but it has really been shaped and formed by many others, and including many open-hearted and embodied women that have spoken into the practice.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. Yeah, I've loved watching the evolution of this process and how you both, Andrew and yourself, have grown into guiding that space. And I think in the beginning, maybe like a year and a half ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I don't know, when I was first invited to join the both of you on a night hike, and maybe felt a little clunky. And as I think it was Andrew who was speaking this invocation, maybe he was like second guessing himself a little bit. I could kind of sense that. But I went on one like a month ago, and Andrew will admit that he still feels uncomfortable with like guiding and facilitating. But man, I was blown away, and like I really felt his invocation and the sincerity of the invocation of the spirit of this place, and the reverence you bring to every aspect of that practice, man. And to learn that you've been on like 75 plus of these, it's so cool.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
As you're noticing, this like this arc, and and you're thinking about this, what is emerging for you now?
I feel like this process has been really guided by something deep inside of me, an intuition that says I need to just go out and be more in nature, an intuition that hears about a training called relational somatic healing, and just hearing the name thinking I need to do that. And it's such a rich and important part of my life. there's this tuning in and listening. That's also been a process of learning how to hear and tune into my intuition that has been guiding me. And that's this emerging, I feel like that's what's emergent in me right now, is learning to trust my intuition, having deeper confidence in my intuition, to rely less on this happened and this worked before, so I'm going to keep doing that thing, and more tuning into, if I'm working with a client, like what is coming up for them, and attuning to them, not with a plan, but just being really present and meeting them where they're at. And I find my guide work is much more effective as I'm doing that. I find the night walks are much more potent when we have a gentle, structured arc of the experience, but when we can really tune into what's happening with the other people on the walk and be agile and meet whatever's coming up. So it's a learning process of trusting my self, my intuition, learning to be present and attuning to the people I'm working with.
What does it feel like to be in alignment with your intuition?
It feels enlivening. I feel, just feel alive. I feel nourished. I can spend a whole day with a client and come away not feeling drained, but feeling like I am so resourced and nourished and feel alive, and feels like there's a flow. People talk about a flow state, and I think I tap into that sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's a great feeling.
I love seeing you come alive, and the thought that came to me in reflection of my own, how I feel like I'm showing up more in a similar way of alignment with my intuition, alignment with my deep reason for being here or incarnating at this time. There's this feeling in my chest, like this warmth, this like after I come away from an experience of stepping out in a way that is in that alignment. And yeah, from where you stand now, what meaning do you make of this journey, the arc of your, process that you've shared today?
Yeah. I mentioned Joanna Macy earlier, and a big part of her work is talking about the great turning. And it's this turning away from a whole civilization that's based on extraction and commodifying the earth and people to one that's regenerative. And it feels like that's this bigger arc of the universe that's unfolding. And I feel like I'm a part of that. And I feel enlivened when I find others who are on that path, like our men's group, other healers. And it feels like something bigger and beyond me is moving and at work. And my role is to tap into that, connect to that, and to allow myself to jump into that current to be a part of this great turning. So
the Watsu image came back to me. To be in the flow. Yeah. If anyone listening is moving through their own rupture, what would you like them to hear?
In my experience, and in the experience of working and guiding with people, the destination might not even be known or understood, but to move. We have a practice on our night walk that we learned from a friend, and it's to let every step be the destination. Often when we're hiking, we're thinking, I'm going to do this loop or I'm going to climb to that peak. But there's something about being present and mindful and letting every step be, this is where I need to be right now. And so people in the middle of their rupture might have no idea of where they need to go or want to go or what they're going towards, but just to be present, to let the next step be the destination, and to take a step, to maybe seek help in other co-sojourners on the journey to walk with you or to help guide you on that. But
sometimes the first step can be that hardest. Sometimes that first step feels like a huge leap. I'm going to take my first psychedelic journey, or I'm going to start therapy, or I'm going to join this, support circle or something.
Yeah.
It sounds like it can begin to flow from there.
Mm-hmm. I've walked the Camino a couple of times, short stints of it, the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. And there's a beautiful poem about that pilgrimage that says, the way is made by walking. And this idea that you might not know where you're going, but you step. And then after a while, you look back and you see this wake of your life and you see the path that has unfolded before you. That is the way that you're meant to follow, even if you didn't know what it looked like as you were stepping. And it reminds me also of a song that says, you don't have to know the way knows the way. And so just being open to moving and taking that step is really important.
Wow. That was my next question for you. If you had anything to offer by way of closing. So this is perfect.
Yeah.
The way knows the way. Yeah.
If I had a better voice, I would sing it for you, but I'll leave it at that. You don't have to know the way knows the way.
Josh has a second life as a bassist in a funk band. I've yet to see you perform.
Yeah. I'll invite you to a couple of our upcoming gigs.
Oh, definitely.
We are Oakland's premier dad band, by the way. Self-proclaimed, but that's how we're billing ourselves.
Well, thank you so much for how you showed up today, Josh. I deeply appreciate your courage and presence in all that you shared. I'm checking out with gratitude and just feeling honored and excited for you on your journey, and feeling this deep connection in the ways that we support each other and the different spaces we show up in together.
Yeah, same. Feeling gratitude for this vision and this work that you're doing, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it and to support it as your friend, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Thank you again for joining us in this circle of ruptures and roots. These stories remind us that rupture isn't the end. It's where roots begin to reach once more for life. If this conversation touched something in you, then I invite you to sit with it, let it ripple, and maybe share it with someone who might also feel the resonance. If you are called to help sustain this work and deepen in community with your fellow travelers, you can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/sanctuary of shatterings. Your presence there helps tend the fire that keeps this circle alive. Until next time, may you find nourishment in the roots beneath you and courage in the ruptures that open your path.